Welcome to the Hardwood Hustle, powered by PGC Basketball. We believe in the value of a coach. We're here to educate, empower, and encourage you to lead like never before. This week, TJ and Sam discuss players making demands. We're currently seeing the effects of player movement in the NBA and the transfer portal in college, and how it's trickling down to our high school and youth programs. This conversation will help coaches be more aware of the challenges and think through the best response. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Hardwood Hustle. Today, we are going to talk about an NBA issue, but don't tune out yet, because if you're like me, I don't love talking about NBA issues all the time. But a lot of these issues trickle down. They affect players and coaches at every different level. I think it's true of most things in life. You know, when we think about body image, or we think about magazines and TV, and that's what we got to look like. And when we think about, how do we want to act? How do we want to be? We look at millionaires or rich people and their lifestyles. And when we're in the basketball world, people look at the NBA, and that affects and that trickles down the way the game is played at every single level. Looking back at Charles Barkley and, I'm not a role model. I think eventually he realized, gosh, I am a role model. But I think a lot of NBA players think of it that way. Well, I'm not a role model. I need to do what I need to do and take care of myself. And that's their opinion. That's up for them to decide. But specifically today, we're going to talk about what's going on with Kevin Durant. And obviously, he wants out, kind of like he's wanted out some other places, and he wants to be traded. And more recent than that is the demand that, like, hey, the staff or the leadership's got to go if you want to keep me. And so we're going to talk about demands. And I think this is relevant to every level of basketball. And you can see it in college basketball in the portal. Well, if I'm not going to get this, I'm going to go there. I think you see it in high school. If I'm not going to be able to get this number of shots or that amount of work, then I'm going to go there. And I think there's a lot of people placing demands, and it puts people in an uncomfortable situation. From coach's standpoint, I think they're dealing with this quite often. Well, what do I do to keep this player? They're a really good player. Do I kind of bend a little bit, or do I break all the way, or do I not give anything and I'll just let him go? And all of us get put in that situation probably multiple times throughout our career. But Sam, what are your thoughts on the newest, understanding of what's going on with the Brooklyn Nets and Durant saying that it's either me or the staff?
Yeah, well, before I say anything, obviously these are reports. I don't know that Kevin Durant's come out and said it with his own mouth, but that's the reports that come out behind the scenes and from insiders. Well, there's the first thing is kind of irony. I don't know that this helps coaches right now, but I just think it's ironic that Kyrie and Kevin Durant joined a team. And if you remember the infamous Kyrie basically saying, well, we don't really need a coach. I don't know if you remember that. He's like, we don't really need a coach. But then all of a sudden, I think they handpicked Steve Nash. I think, Kevin Durant's relationship with the Warriors. So that's interesting to me to know, okay, what happened? What went south? What went sour in that relationship where, he's brought in and now he doesn't want to play for him and he wants a change in leadership. So I find that ironic. And the NBA is not an apples to apples comparison, TJ, with high school. The reality is, these players are the franchise. I mean, Rick Carlisle, is no longer the coach for Dallas. Luka's still there. So, that's been going on for decades at professional sports. And so that is what it is with when you're paying these superstars who are, exuberantly talented players. And so that's the first thought I have. I know we're going to relate it to like more common coaches at maybe the college, high school level.
Yeah, and I think it does directly relate. I mean, I think it's different that you're in $1 million demand where it's like, well, I'm staying or the coach goes. Well, where does this happen in high school basketball? We have friends that recently, left their job because the player said, we're not going to play anymore because the coach isn't doing a good enough job. So we know that happens. We know that players are constantly leaving, saying, well, I'm not getting this or I'm not getting that. So they want to leave. So I think the idea around not getting what you want is kind of an epidemic of I'm going to leave, I'm going to go. So before we dive deeper into that, would you move your children for basketball?
Would I move them for basketball? Yeah, I would. But there's some asterisk. There's some context to that. If, I have two boys and they both play basketball, and Katie Grace, my daughter, is the best athlete in the family, but we can't get her to play basketball. But if Jackson and Cooper, are super committed basketball players and they love it and they breathe it and it's a big part of their lives, then, and they were in a situation where, it could be better for them to attend a school for basketball reasons. It also aligned with us as a family with school or, spiritual and component. Yeah. That's the longer answer, but yeah, the short answer is yes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, here's the interesting thing about it. I think all of us have a threshold of where we would change situations. And I think that, let's say that our child played for a demeaning coach that was ruining their confidence and they're, 12 years old or 15 years older. I think a lot of us would be wanting to get out of that situation for the protection of our child or maybe to give them another opportunity. But I think, is there a difference, or I'm asking, is there a difference between, hey, listen, I'm not getting what I want. So let's just say there's a good coach there. They do a really good job. They pour into the kids, but I'm just not getting as much clock. At that point, is that a good enough reason to move? Because I want to know where the cutoff is for Kevin Durant. Like, where should we judge him on? And I'm not a big fan of judging people in general, but there's a lot of opinions. And where does that needle move to? When you look at Kevin Durant, is it like any demand he makes, he's a spoiled millionaire? Or is it, hey, he's always looking out for the best situation for himself, he should have complete freedom to do this? Where do we draw the line? Because that line's as blurry and gray as it's ever been, I think, throughout sports.
Well, this is a layered thing. I mean, like TJ, if you're in a job right now, you're a head college coach. If you had a new athletic director come in, or your current athletic director or president change their leadership style, you would evaluate whether you should stay or not. That would be a natural thing. We live in a transit society where, people have choices, and, high school level, middle school level, pro level. The reality is that it's a transient time, and you can go somewhere. So, like, yeah, Kevin Durant signed a contract, but how many contracts in professional lives, not including sports, does the CEO or the guy working at the bank, he doesn't sign a 5-year contract. Now, granted, Kevin Durant has a lot of security in that. But my point is, I don't have a lot of judgment on Kevin Durant. I don't know all the facts of it. Yeah. Do I have some curiosity about, man, or how that relates to kids, and like the first time of adversity and the first time of toughness that we bail, or we go look for something greener when sometimes we need to work through it? Absolutely. But that's up to each parent. Like you and I are parents, and yeah, do our kids look up to him as a basketball player? Sure. But that's not going to influence who they're becoming as a person.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I actually think it does. I think I'm around a lot of players and a lot of people that I think they're and I know I was heavily influenced by the people I was around, the things that I watched, the music that I listened to. And I think that's been true my entire life. And so I think especially when you're at most impressionable, and I don't know what the standard is. I don't know how accountable they are for that, how much we should, expect them to always make the right decisions. But I do think that their decisions do trickle down, whether we agree or disagree. I just think that those definitely have effect on the way people, when people started making threes and doing horns and putting the threes up, why is that? Because a player started doing that. When they started pulling their jersey and saying, hey, look at me, I scored the touchdown, right? Why they did it? Because a pro did that.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I agree. Yes, they have an influence. My point or my stance would be, though, we as a parent or a coach, it is our job to help people understand, like if I sit down Jackson Cooper and talk to him about, hey, let's talk about this Kevin Durant situation. I want you to know, when you're on a team or you have a job and things don't go well, like, you got to work through it, and you got to understand, like, I would use and so if they go out in their life and they quit a job because they saw Kevin Durant do it, well, then I haven't done a very good job as a parent. Now, granted, you and I coach kids that don't, sometimes always have a strong family structure, and I get it. It has influence, but that would be my argument, kind of back to what you referenced earlier with Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley said, I'm not a role model, meaning parents, you better do your job at home. You need to shape your young men and women, your kids at home. You're the role model. And, athletes, are athletes. They're great. Kevin Durant's a great basketball player, an all-time top 50 player. Does that mean how every kid and young person should model their lives after him? I don't know. I mean, I think he probably is a good person, I'm assuming too, but you see what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I'm just saying it's the way of the world right now. And so, I mean, leadership is influence, and influence is leadership. I think that these people have influence, and it's at any level. These people being CEOs, these people being movie stars, these people being whatever, pastors, coaches. Everybody has some level of leadership and influence, and I think the bigger the stage, probably the greater level of influence. And so it leads to, like, at what point do we push back, or do we just let it go? So, for instance, if this is the way it's going to be, I'll equate it to my own life in college basketball. The transfer portal is crazy. There's more and more players leaving every single year. I think originally when I got into college basketball, I expected to coach 90% of my players for 4 years when I started coaching college basketball. That was probably the minimum. And JUCO player 2 years. But now I think most coaches probably would think, wow, if I coach 50% of my players for 4 years, that would be amazing. And so that has definitely changed. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Like, is it like we just need to give in to the fact that it's an open, free market and people are just going to be going and we're going to let that go? Or should we be pushing back on that and saying, no, like there should be stronger rules? Like, no, if you're going to make a commitment, you got to stick with your commitment. Somebody like Kevin Durant, what do? You just put a flag in the ground and say, listen, no, you signed a 5-year contract. We're not trading you. You show up with a great attitude every single day, or we find you. We've seen this happen over and over again. The Ben Simmons issue, Kevin Durant, like this is constantly happening in every single sport. And I think it's a direct correlation how it's trickling down as we see it happening more and more at every single level of sport.
Yeah, I agree. There's crossover. Is sport a reflection of society, or is society a reflection of sport? There's probably some influence both ways, but there's no doubt that does exist. So to be clear, my stance would be, I don't think it's healthy for anyone, whether you're a third grader or a college kid or your 35-year-old all-star Kevin Durant, that when things don't go your way, you bail. Why are divorce rates up? Why? Because people don't know how to work through some freaking adversity. Like they don't know what a commitment is. It's commitment until things don't go well. So that's why more people get divorced than actually stay married. So this is, again, is it a reflection? Is Kevin Durant or our sports athletes, pro athletes, are they a reflection of society, or are they more influencing society? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, and I tend to think it comes from the top down. And I'm not putting this on Kevin Durant and basketball in itself. I mean, I think just in general, most people look up to their stars and they try and emulate their stars. And so that's where I think it's a top down rather than a bottom up society influence where, yeah, I see that they've got that nice car. I want that nice car. I see that they've got, this, whatever the status is and whatever realm people are in, that I think people look up to that type of stuff. And that's where the question is like, what could we do with this? The the Brooklyn Nets coach, not the coach, but the GM or the owner came back and said, no, we're sticking with our staff. And what does that mean? I mean, I think a lot of people applauded him for that. So what happens next? Hey, Kevin Durant, sorry, we're staying with the same coaches. And then Kevin Durant, what does he do? Does he come back and is he unhappy and is he upset? And him and Steve Nash have a hard time working together and working along. And these things tend to work out to some level because no one wants to miss their millions of dollars in paychecks. But there are situations where they sit out and they don't play. But my question goes back to this, Sam. Like, what should we have? I'll just be a black and white question here. Should we have rules in place to stop this stuff, or should we just let it go? And there's no in between. You can't ride the fence on this one. So should we just say, if you sign a college contract for 4 years, then you are committed to there in 4 years unless A, B, and C happens. And if you sign an NBA contract or an NFL contract or whatever, you are there and you're required and you cannot renegotiate for that amount of time until it's over and not give them that opportunity? And if you go to a high school, should we just say, once you're there and you're in that program, unless there's adequate proof of job change, parents move, or whatever they want the standard to be, should we put those high level standards on there? Because I think the way it's going is just kind of like, man, this is just too defeating. Like, we just got to let all of this go. And maybe that's the way to go. I don't know. The other one is to push back on it. And so should we push back, or should we just let it happen?
You should stand ground and stand up for what's right. That's my first answer. Back to your black-white stance, or like if you're giving me a what if statement, then yeah, I'm gonna say, like, if I signed a contract to play 4 years at Emmanuel College, then unless you breach that on your end, or like I uphold it, or vice versa, I don't think that's not how life is. So it is a what if. But if that's the hypothetical you're giving me, sure. I think when you sign on, it's similar. It's not completely similar, but when I got married to my wife, I made a commitment till death do us part. And this is not a criticism of people listening who've been divorced, but there's a commitment there, and its commitment is not conditional. So I think that's true, TJ, but I also know that's not reality. And I know that the state of, let's just use college basketball. The state of college basketball right now is one where it is more common to transfer than stick it out. That's a fact. It's more common to transfer than stick it out. So you putting in a bunch of rules in place of like, okay, if you sign with us, we expect you, like, you could try that, but I don't think it's going to get received. Or what I think you already do is you want to build a strong culture. You want to build strong relationships where people want to be a part of it. They want to come back to, and you hope that's the culture you build. But you and I've talked about this. I think last thing I'll say on it is, like, it does put you in a weird predicament where you want to recruit high school kids, right, TJ? You want to recruit high school kids. So you recruit a kid. This is the reality of college basketball in so many ways at a lot of levels. You got a freshman that comes in. He wants to play a lot in today's microwave world. We want it right now. And you develop him. You put a lot of time into it. You spend more time on development than most programs. He doesn't play much. You're expecting maybe sophomore, junior year, he starts cracking rotation, maybe starter minutes, but he's pissed off because you're not playing him enough, and now boom, he's out the door. So what does that force you to do? It makes you have to make this decision. Well, shoot, I can't even coach kids for 4 years, man. Might as well go recruit transfers. I only have them for 1 year, but they're 22 years old. They're grown men. They're going to step in. They're going to help us win games and be competitive. And I'll just invest what I can into that 1 year of that kid's life. Is it more ideal? No. I mean, that's essentially what Coach K did at Duke. I mean, he sell out is not the right word, but he sold out like, we're going to go after the one and dones. And kid being at Duke for 9 months is a lot different than the 4 years. And that's the difference in 2022 and 1992. So I said a lot there, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, it is different. And I don't know the right answer to it, because I think it's headed in the direction of anything goes. And you can see that in the rules. And I understand the other side of it too. Well, why can't a player leave? A coach could leave, right? There's so many different things that you could argue, and they make sense. And so I don't know that I have a strongly held belief in this. I am a little bit worried and a little bit concerned, and like, where is this headed? Because it's just a mass exodus from anytime somebody doesn't like anything. And so society wise, like, I worry about what that might end up doing, or the habits it might end up building, or I think we already have seen it happen across the world, and it continues to just grow. So should we put handcuffs on there? Like, I don't believe in like really solid, tight handcuffs where it's like, you come to my college, if you leave, you sit out the rest of your 3 years, right? I don't think that's right. Or if you sign a contract, with the New Jersey or Brooklyn Nets, you sign a contract there, 5-year contract. I don't think if you want to leave after 1 year that, you can ever play in the NBA again. Nothing crazy like that. But should there be some sort of consequence? Because if you look at some of these players, and maybe it's just the assumed risk by the Brooklyn Nets, when they took on Kyrie and they took on Harden and they took on, KD, it was a bet. It was a bet that we were going all in on some championships. the reality of that, if you remember before, they had a pretty good team that was coming out of nowhere, like young guys that were growing and building, and they sold the farm to go after these winning the championships. Now, the risk reward of that is it might just blow up. You know what I mean? Harden's already gone. You brought in Simmons, who's got 1,000 question marks. KD wants out. Like so they might have just blown up their franchise and set it back 8 to 10 years. And is that a risk they run? But then if you go back to the owner's side and you say, look, the minute any player just demands they want out and everybody knows that they're tradable at a low price, they have a lot of power where they can just take the money, demand the trade. And on the other end of it, they know that, gosh, this person really wants out. We've got to trade this person and get some value back before they leave. And so there's some consequences to that, and that could be something really detrimental to a program like the Nets.
Well, that's how that team was formed. Look at James Harden, who came in. What did he do to get out?
That's the way it was formed. So is that just the inherent risk that they take? Is that what the Nets do? Like, are they just saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the inherent risk when you're dealing with, I shouldn't even say dealing with. We're talking about hyper-competitive elite athletes who have a healthy ego, who have a lot of money at disposal. This doesn't just stop with athletes. We could go look at, CEOs of companies who make 15, 20 million a year, and they have healthy egos who believe very strongly in themselves. And they, sometimes those leadership styles run people ragged and they get fired, so like when that's a whole nother thing here. Is like, we're talking about, highly egotistical people who believe in themselves, and egotistical could be a positive thing and a very negative thing. But I think that's part of the discussion is, so when they demand it, the beauty of it, the contract's in place. So the Nets GM can say, no, we're not trading you. And so then Kevin Durant gets to make a decision. Is he just going to sit out? Is he going to come and have a bad attitude like Harden did in Houston until they get sick of it and they just trade him? That's what happened to Houston. That's what happened to Kyrie in Boston. Is they ran tired of it, and so they got rid. What happened when Ben Simmons didn't like things? He went to practice, but he didn't practice. So this happens. Like, people put their foot in the ground, and then people got to make decisions.
Yeah, and so it goes back to like the question, and I think I'd love to hear from listeners, but how much does a contract matter? You know what I mean? Like, should we even fight that anymore? Because it's all balloons and roses when KD says, I'm going to Brooklyn for 5 years. This is my home. I'm coming home. I want to be back here. And then things don't go well, and then I want out of here. It wasn't a real 5-year contract. There's not real consequences to that. I guess
it's a contract until somebody requests they don't want to end the contract.
And I guess by either team, but that's what I'm asking. Like, how much do these really, really matter? Because at any level or business, same thing. It's not just sports. I'm not just picking on KD, but these contracts. How much does that marriage contract matter? How much does that? And I think it gets down to the root of it, of figuring out, like, is this a societal problem? Like, is this something we really need to do something about or attempt to do something about? And I think one of the hardest things to answer is, what would we do about it? Like, how would we change this? Because it would be pretty much an upheaval of changing of rules to get people to agree. And it's going the other direction. It's going the other direction from let's make rules, let's hold people to these contracts. It's going to a place of, like, just do what you want to do. You don't like that college, go to that college. You don't like that high school, go to that high school. You don't like your NBA contract, just tell them you want to trade, just to put them in a little bit of a bind. And so the easy way out is getting easier, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, in college sports, they've eliminated the penalty of the sit out. When you transferred 3 years ago, you sit out for a year, which made people pause. And that was it made a young man pause. Do I want to give up a year? Yes, this situation is so bad that I can't thrive here. I'm not mentally healthy. I need to get out. Okay, I'm willing to sit out a year. Or, you know what? I'm the third string and I've never been third string before. This is my first time in my life where I've got to compete to get my spot. And now I've got to learn that I've got to work hard. I've got to have better practice habits. I got to have better discipline. If I transfer, I sit out a year. And there's stories. I mean, who was a story? I think it was Jeff Capel, who is the head coach at Pittsburgh. And he talked about, he called his dad and he wanted to leave Duke after his freshman year. And his dad said, shut up, just you work through it. Like nowadays, a kid might call a dad and say, I'll be there in the morning. I'll pick you up. You're done. The coach is in it. Like that's a very big generalization, TJ, but I think it's a fair one. Stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason. Generalizations are generalizations for a reason. And I do think, for a lot of different reasons today, there's those comedy things, the graphics where the kid is misbehaving in class, and 20 years ago, the parents and the teacher are kind of parenting, coaching, teaching the child. And now it's the parents are joined forces with the student, the fifth grader, and they're going at the teacher. So now you've got administrators and schools and teachers who are afraid to discipline because they're afraid to lose their job. And that's not healthy for kids. Now that's who it hurts, is like, what kind of people are we raising? What's the future of, society in that way? Not to get too deep, but yeah, I mean, this.
Yeah. And, I think we could go the other direction in some situations too, where, a coach is saying whatever they want to say, doing whatever they want to do, and it's not really building up kids, and it's not not helping them, be the person they want to be. It's just a matter of getting something out of them so you can win basketball games. And at that point, is there, a reason or a good reason for a parent to stand up and say, no, listen, this is not what coaching's about. And my child was put here to grow. Like there's both sides of that, right? Like I think it happens where there are times to go in there and to stand up and say, this isn't right. And I want to make sure that this is done well so that other children are protected. And so there are opportunities like that as well. It's just a really confusing situation. Like, how are we going to handle this? And what is it really going to mean to us in society? Is it going to be just a free for all? I mean, college basketball is headed towards a free for all, right? And I don't think there's any way around it with the NLIs and the money and college sports in general. The best players are going to get paid the most money. A lot of players aren't going to like their situation. They're going to leave. And there's more to it than just your side. I know everybody's got a side to this, but they're like, yeah, kids should for sure be able to transfer, get in the portal, like that. Yeah, they should for sure be able to do all of these things. It's a free country. And I understand why people say that. But have you seen the stats on number of people that went in the transfer portal that no longer have an opportunity, a scholarship? They rather have a home, like they don't have anywhere to play. Like those are 18, 19-year-old kids jumping in the portal that may have had a scholarship or an opportunity to play college basketball was their dream. And they weren't mature enough to see that on the other end of that, there might not be another opportunity out there for me. And there's a huge percentage of those kids that didn't land anywhere.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And two things can be true. Like, I think freedom of choice is, why should a coach be allowed to bounce and a player shouldn't? I believe in that. Like, I'm not against a player having the ability to transfer. I know with that comes a lot of the issues we've already said. I don't know. It's like, that's the symptom. So it's not, is the medicine, is the solution to it to put in a rule where there's a transfer penalty? Maybe, but I think it's deeper than that. It's like putting the Band-Aid when we need to do surgery, meaning like we got to do better when the kid arrives there and they hit the adversity. Have we prepared them to be able to work through it? Going back to the Jeff Capel thing. That's to me the bigger issue here. That is a parenting thing. That is a, enabling thing from birth to 18 or birth to 30. Like those issues need to be addressed. I'm not sure by rule. I don't think that's a solution either. I mean, I know it does offer some protection. So, you know what I mean? That's where I land. I'm for freedom of choice.
I mean, look, Sam, you and I think a lot of people that are listening probably battle with this on a regular basis. I mean, when you're thinking about as a parent, should there be a rule, don't cross the road without a parent holding your hand? At what age does that end? Right? It's put there for their protection. Like we're trying to protect them from crossing the road, but then at 8, 9, 10, like at what age do we say now it's okay? And I think the same thing applies here when you're looking at like, college basketball. Like some of these kids, I mean, I recognize that 2% of kids improved their opportunity by moving to a school that was bigger, more money, whatever. But then there's a large number of kids that didn't improve. And so is it okay if 2% can improve and 40% go the other direction and they don't get a better situation, but they chase the dream and they thought and they missed the opportunity, they had bad information and they went and they left or whatever it might be, then is that okay? Like, and what age does that just become? Hey, they're 18 now and it's free for all. Is that the cutoff, 18?
I don't know I mean, I was thinking about your analogy with the holding the hand. I mean, there's rules in place that people don't follow. People follow rules until they don't want to follow them. It's an interest. Like, okay, here's another real life example. Georgia wide receiver. Georgia and Alabama played national football championship, right? And there's a kid named Jermaine Burton who played for Georgia, TJ, national championship game, and he transferred like days after to guess where? Alabama. Like, I don't know about in conference transferring. I don't know that that's healthy. Is in conference a good rule, or does it need to be across the board? I have a hard time understanding the psyche of that player, because I'm thinking, man, if I go to college and I've invested in it and I've got my brothers, my sisters next to me that I've been sweating and going to battle with and weight training and summer sprints and stadium runs and practice grinds and all these, intimate settings. And then all of a sudden he goes to our biggest rival days after we just played in the national championship. That's an interest. Like, is that okay? Is in conference? They used to have in conference stipulations, but those are out the window now too.
Yeah, and that's what I'm asking. Like, is it just like we are definitely headed in the direction of free for all, right? Like that's where it's headed. We're getting there closer by the day, and at some point, these things aren't going to matter. I mean, let's just say you're in a conference, it's a 10-team conference, and you're the 8th place team in the conference. You have lower facilities, you don't have much money, you don't have whatever, but you bust your tail to find this young man or young woman. You get them in there, you put them in a situation, you help build up and develop their game. They go in there, they really perform, your team moves up, and immediately they look across the conference and, the number one team, they've got a lot of money. They got a better facility. They got a better whatever. And then they instantly go, right? Like the competitiveness across the country, like how I think if you look at college football, where is it headed? I mean, it's headed to a place where, and it has already gotten to some place where there's only really 4 teams in the hunt for the national championship, throwing a wild card every other year. Like you're just going to get to the point where, and at that point, why don't they just treat it like the NFL? Like, why doesn't it just become more like that? Because then at least maybe they could balance it out where there's a salary cap and all that kind of stuff. Because right now it's just an arms race. Who can build the biggest facility? Who can get the biggest NLIs? Who can buy it? So it's like, I mean, who's going to win in baseball? The Yankees with their luxury tax, right? And then go through. Well, in college football, that's where it's going to be. It's like, who can pay the most money? Is that healthy? Is that good?
Well, no, I don't think that's if we're all playing the same game, but the rules change. It'd be like you and I are coaching a football team, and I feel like we may be going off some major side roads here, but if you and I are coaching a football game, TJ, and your goalposts are 80 feet wide and my goalposts are 10 feet wide, that's what it's like playing, to your point. Like if you're the Yankees, your goalposts are 80 feet wide, and if you're the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, yours are 10 feet wide. Your margin for error is so small. And yeah, I don't think that's healthy in pro sports. And I definitely don't think the NLI movement in college sports is healthy, because it is an outbidding war. Who has the most money? And by the way, you're paying kids, again, this is where we're spider webbing out here. You're paying kids that hadn't done anything. You got kids on rosters who have proved maybe, all conference. And then you got a kid coming in who's going to make, 150,000, and the starter who's been there for 3 years is making 5,000, and you don't think there's going to be animosity? Okay, welcome to some new challenges as coach, because now you got to manage some egos, some animosity in that locker room.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd be really interested to hear from coaches. Like, where is this headed? Like, where is it going? Because it's obvious that, and maybe some people think it's for the best and it's a good thing. And like, I'm not against seeing players make money. Like, I mean, good for them if they can make money. I'm not against that at all. I'm not against players having freedom of choice. Like, I'm not. It's not even about being against that. It's about like what is really best for people. When I was 18 years old, I'm just going to be honest. I didn't know what was best for me, but I really thought I knew what was best for me. And so I do think that's why some rules and some guardrails are put there for people to be able to make those decisions a little bit better. And I think that, the younger you are, the more you need some of those guardrails to make those decisions. And I'm honestly not interested in winning a debate on what is right. My core cause or maybe my reason for wanting to even have this conversation is like, what can we do? Right. And I think we definitely raised a lot of problems. And I think we were short on solutions for how to do this. As I think as a society right now, we're short on solutions on how to actually make this better, where everybody's benefiting, everybody's growing from it, and sometimes that means rules, that means more rules, sometimes that means less rules. But I think we're just letting the problem spiderweb out and go where it wants to go. I don't know that we're really trying to look at it as what are the things that we want to do that are best for every party involved to try and make this a better place, a better society, whatever it might be.
All right, so I'm going to turn it back to you then. Tomorrow morning, NCAA calls you, and you're now head of all NCAA, and you wave your magic wand, or you have, total control of new legislation. What are you going to do? Are you allowed to Let's start. Let me go piece by piece. Are you allowing transfers?
And that's a good one. Am I allowed? Yes. I mean, I'm allowing transfers for sure because look, I
All right,
don't
are there
think
consequences?
Yeah, I think there has to be consequences. Like, I'm not totally against the one-time transfer rule. I think after that it gets a little bit messy when it becomes a habit and it goes into that. But I do think players should be able to like go to a different place in a different situation.
Okay, hold on. Let me go next. All right, coach, are coaches allowed to transfer?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's part of the reason players can too. I mean, I think that
Is there a consequence? Do they need to sit out a year too?
over the course of like a 4 or 5 year period, I don't know if it's a sit out, but like, yeah, I mean, I could see where there could be some choices there for a coach as well.
So the players would only get one transfer.
Mm-hmm. In a 4 year period.
And see, here's where what happens there is you have a 1 year transfer. You know what happens when a player wants to get a second transfer? They file hardship and they actually make up
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I know.
They just break the rule.
And that's why I'm saying, like, look, people, when you're 18 years old and 30, 40, 50-year-old men and women tell you you're the greatest thing since sliced bread and you're going to get 100 shots a game and you're going to do whatever, like recruiting, that's how it goes. Coaches aren't blameless in this. It's not always just the player's fault. They go in and we didn't tell them about how hard it was going to be. We didn't tell them how hard they're going to have to study. They didn't tell them so there's blame. There's the whole player situation. Most of the time they're walking in eyes wide open, not knowing what's about to come their way. And they probably weren't told by the coach how hard it was going to be. And so I understand some situations where players come in and realize, man, this is not what I thought, or this wasn't the situation, because I think in recruiting, coaches, the grown adults mislead people all the time. And I think they should have an opportunity and a chance to go somewhere else. And I think with coaches, yeah, it's a free market. You did well. You got the opportunity to move up. You got a chance. Now, do I think moving every year, every 2 years or whatever? No, because I think that hurts the program. So you asked me in a perfect world. I get there's a lot of arguments to this. I would like to see some boundaries put to everything on what you can and can't do on NLIs and all that. I think people should be able to make money. I think people should be. Now, is throwing a lot of money at an 18-year-old the best thing to do? And I think we can all argue different things there. And like most people say, well, it's a free market, make what you want, do what you want. There's also a lot of examples of young people making that kind of money and old people making that kind of money and it not bringing out the best in them.
So I know this is an interesting conversation, but go back to the very first thing that ignited it. Kevin Durant. Here's what could have, should have happened. Tell me what you think. Kevin Durant signs his contract. It's him, it's his agent, it's Steve Nash, the coaching staff, the GM, and the owner in the room. And I think if I'm the owner or I'm the GM or I'm the coach, I'd say, hey, Kevin, let's pretend that things go really bad here. We don't win a championship. Let's pretend that one of our players gets injured or traded away. Let's pretend that you run into some friction with the coaching staff and things aren't going well. Hey, Kevin, outline for us, give us an idea that at what point and what would cause you to say, I'm out, I demand a trade. Like, I would want to know on the front end, Kevin, what is it that would cause you to get to a place that you're like, I'm done with you guys? Like, that would be interesting to know. Or because then once you set your intention right there from the beginning, then we can revert back, or we can go back and look at it and see, wait, you told us this would happen, but you seem things don't seem to go well, and now we want, like, I think that's the mistake. For you, TJ, a kid comes in, a senior in high school, you got mom, dad in the office, you got the kid, and it's like, hey, this is who we are. And they're saying, well, this is who we are, and say, hey, is it like, it's putting all the cards on the table, and I'm not sure people go in with eyes wide open. And to your point earlier, it's always better than what you think it is. And it never turns out that way because people aren't honest. So what's the real issue here? Maybe a lack of honesty, maybe a lack of authenticity, a transparency, honest conversation throughout the process. Not like, your house didn't get built in one day and it didn't get torn down in one day either. There's signs that it's falling apart, and it's like, but people don't step into those conversations.
Yeah. Hey, really interesting talk. Obviously, me and you have no answers, but it was fun to talk about anyway. I'd love to hear if any of our listeners have any answers on what you would do, what we do in this situation. I mean, maybe it's good for college sports, but I mean, it's definitely spiraling in a really different direction where it's, pay for play, and it becomes much more like a business. I mean, who has the most money? Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, whatever, those guys got the most money. They're going to continue saying they're going to play for the national championships year in and year out. There's no way those other teams will get in there. It's going to go across other sports. Best players are going to go we've already seen this. Was it Miami Hurricanes player said that if his NLI deal didn't improve, he was leaving. So he just wanted more money. So it's really just pro sports now. I mean, in a lot of ways at the highest level. And is that good? Is that bad? Are there any solutions that would make it better for people? And in a way that would maybe even help it to trickle down better. So we'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions on this, listeners, because I don't know if we can just turn away from it anymore. Like, I think it's just going to continue to spiral, and I'm not sure it's a good thing. But again, I don't have the solution. Sam doesn't have the solution. We need to know your solution. So hit us up at Hardwood_Hustle. We'd love to know what you think about this situation. What could we do? What role could we play? We know we can't solve the whole thing, but is there a role we could play as coaches and leaders that maybe make this better besides just go out there and do our best? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So, hey, he is Sam, I am TJ, and we are the Hardwood Hustle.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hardwood Hustle, where we believe in the value of a coach. We want to bring you quality content and journey with you. Stay connected with us on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us at Hardwood_Hustle. From the Hardwood Hustle team, thanks again. We can't wait to be with you again next week.